John MacColl was born at Kentallon in Durer on the 6th of January 1860. There had been MacColls in Durer since at least the 17th century. Two of them fought at Culloden. Some moved into neighbouring districts and a few went abroad, but mostly they were home-loving folk, content to farm and fish and to excel in the country crafts. John's father Dugald was the tailor at Kentallon. He was also an enthusiastic piper. His wife, Elizabeth MacInnes, came of a piping family too. She was related to Angus MacInnes, piper to Stewart of Fastnacloich, and also to Paul MacInnes, who had been a successful competitor at the Edinburgh competitions in the 1780s. John was the seventh child and the fourth son. In such a Highland community, music making was always popular, and the four boys were no doubt very happy to learn piping from their father. But John had an entirely different approach to it from his brothers. He was determined to excel in the art, and he took every opportunity to read about pipers and to try to improve his own playing. He got a job working in Bunall quarries, and with the money he saved, the story goes that it was £17, he set off for Glasgow to become a piper. It's surprising in some ways that he didn't go to Taymouth Castle, which was nearer and which was the principal centre for piping at the time. But I think he had heard Donald McPhee playing at Bunall Games, and McPhee, according to Robert Meldrum, was the best piper in Scotland at that time. Anyway, John MacColl arrived in Glasgow in the autumn of 1878 and apprenticed himself for the next 2 years to Donald McPhee. In 1880, McPhee died at the early age of 39. There was nothing now to keep the young lad in Glasgow, and when he got the chance of becoming piper to MacDonald of Dunach, he headed back to Argyll. He was now 20 years of age, and the following year he showed how much he had improved by winning the gold medal at Oban. The families of Argyll have always been famous for encouraging piping, and none more so than Kilberry, an estate which John MacColl visited many times with his employer. He commemorated this in one of his early compositions, A Slow March, Archibald Campbell of Kilberry. Another result of his visit to Kilberry was that he met John Carruthers and his family, who had the home farm on the Kilberry estate. One of the girls, Helen, was the real reason for his frequent visits, and she in time became Mrs. John MacColl, later to be immortalised in one of his famous competition marches. From an early stage in his career, John MacColl had shown a talent for composing, but of course, to begin with, some of his efforts were not all that successful. An early traspé, Mrs. MacDonald of Dunach, shows the simple structure that satisfied him in his 20s. It's played here along with a real the Oban and Lorne, specially composed for a concert held about 1921 in Glasgow. John MacColl had started going round the Highland Games while he was in service at Dunach, but soon after he married he found that he could earn a reasonable living as a piper without the job at Dunach. He moved into Oban, and for about 25 years he supported himself and his family entirely through teaching piping and competing at Highland Games. Nobody in the history of piping had done this before, and nobody has done it since. He was truly a professional piper. In one respect he differed from the other master pipers. He had not endured a long period of instruction in Pibroch. Donald McPhee had given him a little, and while at Dunach he had a course from a Ronald Mackenzie. But it seems likely that MacColl learned most of his Pibroch, as many have done since, by listening to the older competitors and then using his own musical judgment. Without doubt the result was very successful. John MacDonald of Inverness, who was 6 years younger than John MacColl, but was the epitome of the traditionally trained Pibroch player, said of John MacColl, "In his playing of the Kiss of the King's Hand, he once gave me one of the most harmonious performances I ever listened to. On that occasion, it was at Burnham, he appeared to be carried away by his playing." John MacColl's career continued to progress favourably in all respects. In 1884 he won the gold medal at Inverness, and in 1888 he won the centenary medal at this meeting, while one of his pupils, William Boa, won the gold medal. In this same year he moved into the spacious Kilbowie cottage. In 1900 he won the clasp at Inverness, and in 1902 he won the first prize for piping at the Paris exhibition. About this time, too, his composing genius began to reach maturity. His wife's sister, Jeanie Carruthers, was helping with the nursing of the children, and a lullaby which he composed for his younger son, John, he later made into the march, Jeanie Carruthers. Between the Boer War and the First World War, John MacColl was associated with two territorial regiments, the Black Watch and the Scottish Horse. The first of these seems to have made no impact on him, but when he left the second, he composed a splendid 6/8 march, which either shows the happiness he had enjoyed there or his happiness at leaving. John MacColl's Farewell to the Scottish Horse. Throughout this period of his life, from about 1883 until 1908, John MacColl led what might have been a rather precarious financial existence, except for the fact that he was talented not only as a piper. His son, John C. MacColl, remembers clearly stories of this time.
He did tell me of finishing a dance, throwing off his kilt, having his running shorts underneath, and competing in the 100 yards race, then putting his kilt and things on, ready for the next dance. This, of course, was just as a professional, to augment his prize money for the day. Naturally, his major earnings came from playing the pipes, dancing and teaching. Before the establishment of the Army School of Piping at Edinburgh, under the late Pipe Major William Ross, there was an arrangement whereby my father taught individuals and groups of pipers attached to various Highland regiments. This meant travelling around Scotland in the winter months, visiting Campbelltown, Inverera, Inverness, and even at times the Outer Hebrides. In the summer months, from June to end September, there were games in all sorts of places, villages and towns throughout Scotland, and even England and Ireland. He was away from home practically all summer, travelling round the games, with only short breaks of a day or two back to Oban. My mother often told me of the excitement of these visits and the presents for the family, my sisters, brother and myself. It must have been quite lucrative in these days, as he told me, and it is recorded, that he could earn £40 in an afternoon from piping, dancing and athletics. Quite a lot of money in the 80s and 90s of last century.
And a good living it was too. In addition to the normal comforts of life, he had many of the luxuries, including a yacht which he raced with considerable success, naturally. The yacht was called the Roe. William McLennan, his fellow competitor in piping and dancing, used to call it the Dear Boat. In 1908, the Glasgow firm of R.G. Laurie decided to start making bagpipes, and they asked John MacColl to take charge of this branch of their work. So ended the touring of the games. He was then 48 years of age and no doubt quite happy to settle down. The First War brought many changes, but few that affected John MacColl directly. His elder son Dugald went off to fight, and when he returned safely, his father wrote this tune for him, Dugald MacColl's Farewell to France. John MacColl's Pibroch playing was a worry to many enthusiasts of his day, not because he wasn't successful, but because he was not a strong link in the traditional teaching line. One critic said of him, "In Kjolmore he lacked expression as compared with MacDougall Gillis, but played very correctly, and in consequence seldom failed to secure prizes." Nevertheless, on 2 occasions he won first prize for composing a new Pibroch. One of his winning tunes was Lament for Neil MacDonald of Dunach. John MacColl was a natural winner at everything he turned his hand to, probably because he had the killer instinct. He just had to be first. He won a gold medal for Gaelic singing at the Luss Maud. He was a more than competent violinist, and even if he had never played pipes, he would be remembered in other spheres.
In the game's off-seasons, he played shinty. His brothers and he excelled at the game. Also football, and in later years golf. As a youngster, I was very proud of his Scotland jersey. He played shinty for Scotland against Ireland in 1887. At football, he played for an Oban team, Glenmore, in local competitions, and for the district of Lorne in district matches. Golf, I suppose, was a natural follow-on to shinty, and trophies now in my possession show that he was the Oban club champion in 1895 and 1896. His club handicap was +2 at that time. He was a member with me of the Renfrew Golf Club, and I have a little token he received for holing out in one stroke at the 4th hole when he was 71.
At this age, he was still composing as well as ever. In 1933, he produced Captain Duncan MacGregor, a modern bagpipe strathspey of considerable technical difficulty. In fact, only the difficulty of playing it keeps it from being heard a great deal oftener. Here it is, along with his best reel, Jock Wilson's Ball. Although he could compose all kinds of music, John MacColl is principally famous as a composer of competition marches. Few men can compare with him for quality and quantity, and one of the few is his own pupil Willie Laurie. John MacColl used to say that composing was not something that came easily, that he had to sit down and work from nothing, no phrases, no melody, just the idea he wanted to express. Tunes to him had personalities, depicting the people or events they were meant to describe. Jeannie Carruthers was always a lullaby, soft and feminine. John McFadden of Melfort, with which we began the programme, told of a well-loved friend, and it's essentially a masculine tune. In 1934 he composed The Clan MacColl, a tune which is a real patriotic, proud clan gathering. This was his last great composition. Almost certainly his years in Glasgow were an anticlimax after the adventurous period as a free and independent piper, but they were valuable years nonetheless. Like Gillis, he took an active part in the Scottish Pipers Association, and he was a conscientious and devoted teacher. Several of his pupils, like wee Donald MacLean, reached the highest ranks, and many other top pipers went to him for the final polish. He died on the 8th of June, 1943. At his funeral, John MacDonald of the Glasgow Police played The Lament for the Children. We finish, however, not with a lament, but with a competition march, because there was nothing sad about John MacColl's life. It was long, successful, and useful. When he decided to compose this tune, he tried to capture the picture of Oban on Games Day, with the crowds of people lining the streets to watch the stewards and pipers parade up to the games field. This is one of his best-loved tunes, and it's appropriate that every year when Games Day comes round, it's played in the parade through Oban, the Argyllshire gathering.